Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer. Welcome to the Development Hell Podcast, and it's the movie club here again to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the movie Drive. And got Joe, Jim, Vinnie, and Alex here. And so, how many of us here, this is your first time watching Drive? So we got a couple of newbies here, and a couple of us have watched it a lot. At least I can speak for Alex and myself. But so we're going to get things started with everybody's kind of basic thoughts on the film. So, Vinnie, what are your basic thoughts after rewatching the film?
Well, this was only my second time watching it. The first and really only time I watched it was when I rented it from the library on DVD. Remember those? A few months after it came out. So that was like 10 years ago. But you know what? It really is impressive how, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce his full name right, but Nicolas Winding Refn, is that how you say it?
Pretty much, yeah.
You know, it really is impressive how he was able to really compel you with a character that you really don't know much about him at all, and you don't really learn much about him throughout any part of the movie. You pretty much get like any little details about him you maybe get within the first 15 minutes or so, and that just sustains you throughout the whole movie. And just, it's really in part thanks to Ryan Gosling's performance, because he really does nail down that mysterious aura to his about his character. And just, it really was, on the surface, it's kind of like a bare bones like revenge thriller, but there's definitely more underneath the events of the movie, which we'll get into more details about that as we go on, but those are my general thoughts.
Awesome. How about you, Joe?
I have to put this out there. The first time watching this movie, I did it with my dad, 65-year-old man, watching this movie for the first time with him. And I would say I have no regrets doing that, because it actually made the viewing experience 10 times funnier, because here's my impression watching it, and then there's his impression. And there's certain things that we actually both agreed on when watching it. But one thing I want to say is before even watching the film, I had this assumption that this was going to be like, a modern day version of Bullet. Ryan Gosling gives that impression that he's kind of like a modern day Steve McQueen in some ways. But, upon watching the movie, it does exactly what by thinking that, but getting something else, it really captures what I think the movie does so well, which is subversion. It gives you one thing, and then the next scene, it tells you something else that like completely throws the carpet right from underneath you. I would go out and say that I really feel like this movie inspired an aesthetic when it comes to like, if you go online, there's a thing called vaporwave, which takes like the color schemes of the 80s and 90s, kind of like, those like old cups that are white with like the little blue squiggle on it. Like, I feel like that movie captures that aesthetic. And one last note I could talk about, we could definitely talk more in depth about it, is just the fact that, you have a character like Ryan Gosling that's mysterious, but in some ways, I think it really captures what a lot of TV shows does more than a lot of feature films, which is taking, your protagonist, but the people that are kind of psychotic in a way, or kind of like messed up people, and making them your heroes, like Tony Soprano or Walter White or Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, people that are not necessarily heroes. You really shouldn't be like them, but like they're your heroes, they're your protagonists. You follow them throughout the whole movie. That you see more on TV shows than you do really in like a feature film, and I think this is probably the best version of that type of character that you've seen in a movie. I might be the only one that feels that way. I mean, y'all could disagree on that, but that's just the impression I had when watching it. And I'd be definitely interested to see if anybody else disagrees on that too.
Along with like 90% of Martin Scorsese protagonists.
And there you go. Yeah, essentially. Yeah, you're right.
How
Absolutely.
about you, Jim?
First time viewer, long time lurker, first time viewer. Alex has been telling me to watch this movie for how many years? 10 years at this point. I got questions as always. The biggest one probably being like, what is an art house film? Because that's what everybody has to say about this movie. Like, oh, it's an art house. It's the art house action movie. It's the art house thriller. And I don't really know what that means. So if we could nail down a definition on art house, I think that'd be beneficial for me. Listening to Joe's answer, I might be able to volunteer a definition. Being referential to like historical Hollywood movies. But we can get back to that. For me, it but it made me want to watch other movies, which is not a knock on the film. The opposite, actually. So like watching Ryan Gosling, I'd forgotten how good he was at being the vulnerable, damaged, sensitive lead character, for example. The love story I thought was really sweet, but there's a lot about him that I want to know that I don't get, you know what I mean? And I think that's purposeful. So like after this, I watched Lars and the Real Girl. What was the other movie that it reminded me? Oh, it was Drive. Sorry, not Drive. Baby Driver was the other movie.
Yes.
And
Yes.
After watching this movie, I kind of wish that I had waited to watch Baby Driver until I watched Drive, because I think I would have gotten more out of Baby Driver after watching this movie, because there are so many obvious points of inspiration from this movie to Baby Driver, which is really well done, and I really enjoyed the movie. But yeah, all in all, really enjoyable. Aesthetically, everything works. Not everything that this director, I'm not going to pronounce his name, I don't think everything he's tried to do worked as well as this one, but for some reason, everything really lined up with this movie, and this is like his, bread and butter. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I finally got to watch it, and glad you guys gave me an excuse to watch it.
There we go. And probably to our resident biggest fan of Drive, Alex.
Yes, I love this movie. I love it a lot. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear, all your takes on it. I mean, I thought I was in for a run-of-the-mill like action driving movie like most people, and as soon as those letters came on the screen, as soon as you hear the Night Call song, I knew immediately. The first time I watched it in theaters, I was in for something special, and I absolutely I really do love this movie. It definitely holds up for me, and there's so much that I can say about it. Talk about, I think that what I'm going to contribute first, and then we'll get to other stuff later, is just the music. The music really is great. If you take the music out of it, then you're missing a lot. I also think the sound and the editing is you have to give a lot of credit to that as well. And I also feel like, I know, Jim, you mentioned it being like art house. It's funny because I've seen some art house stuff that's a lot weirder, a lot like harder to get through, for me anyway, than this. Yep. But I can see why a lot of other people felt that way, because they got something they really didn't expect out of this movie. This movie for me is like after Pulp Fiction, it's like my favorite movie. So I just absolutely adore it.
Yeah, to build off of what Alex said there, because like it next to like Fast and Furious, which I think a lot of people thought they were getting, this is 100% an art house film.
Totally. No, you're right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why I was bringing up how like I saw this with my dad, right? And I was thinking that he would think it's something else, but rather than him, what he usually, and I've seen him watch art house movies, and he would like not give a crap afterwards, but like he actually was like asking the right questions right? Like, what happens at the end? Oh, so this character did that. Oh, so this is starting to, like, him putting the pieces together and he's the average moviegoer. Kind of brought me joy. That goes back to what you were saying before about, like, is it an art house movie? I think it's just an enjoyable movie. I don't think giving it that label is even really needed.
Yeah,
It works.
I do understand why you say, because the way, especially, yes, the pace of it, the lack of dialogue, and then throw in the way the violence is done, the way the violence gets bigger and bigger, the intensity of it and the blood, the way it is not the way you would typically see it done in a movie. So I can see why people have started talking about it that way. But I definitely think that this director, he's definitely sort of, this was his best movie. We talk about some of his other movies, but this is obviously his best movie. And he's a foreigner. This is I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is for his first movie he's making in the United States.
I think so, yeah.
And he paints Los Angeles like it's
like Miami.
Like, yes, exactly.
Miami Vice. I feel like this was he had to have grown up watching Miami Vice. Like, I don't know, did anybody else get that impression?
This man's a Michael Mann fan.
Seriously.
Well, Shane, it's funny you say that, because, like, especially during, like, the opening scene, like, it kind of felt like Collateral.
Well, here's the thing.
No, in a good way. In a good way.
Because I think Michael Mann wishes that he was still making films like this in 2011. Because, like, obviously Michael Mann hasn't. Like, I think the last film that he had was, like, Black Hat with Chris Hemsworth and stuff like that. But, like, you could definitely feel like there's a certain way that Nicolas Winding Refn captures Los Angeles, like Michael Mann captures Los Angeles in Collateral. It's a feeling. The city's a whole character on itself. And
can you feel it coming in the air tonight?
If they had Phil Collins in this, that would have just, like, put it, like, beyond perfect. So there you go. So
Mike Tyson in the background. Doo-doo, doo-doo. This is my favorite part, guys. Doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo.
Like, did anyone think that maybe, like, Ryan Gosling's performance in this somewhat influenced his performance in Blade Runner 2049?
So that's an interesting thing. So I'm going to pause that, because I'm going to say my general thoughts real quick.
Oh, sorry.
And then get to that specific point. But so, shamelessly.
Well, before you go, Shane, I've never seen Blade Runner 2049, so please keep that in mind as we go forward.
Neither has Shane, because he fell asleep during it when we went to go see it.
Oh,
it was 10 o'clock at night, and it was a 3-hour movie.
It was a very late movie.
I wake up now I wake up 5 o'clock in the morning every morning. I'm a morning person, but I have watched that multiple times since then and absolutely love that film. But what is it, 2027? We'll be checking out Blade Runner 2049. God. So on here at least. But it's funny because Scribe Magazine just released my Wasteland Vintage Roadshow article about this for its 10th anniversary. They just released it today. And I started by telling the story of how I got introduced to this film, because, like, 10 years ago, I was still at the point where it's like, I didn't go to the movie the whole lot because, poor college student. And I remember hearing things about this movie and people really liking it. And I bought it on DVD. And I was home alone that night when I was still living with my grandparents. I put this movie in and I did not expect to experience what I was about to experience as a 20-year-old watching this movie. And by the end, I was just floored. Like, that was incredible. And there's so much that is going on in this film, because, like, it'd be hard for me to think of another film that's as cool as this movie, because this just has that atmosphere of, like, the music, whether it's the score, because even in that opening heist part of the film where it's like the do do doom 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 do do doom doom, and just like the score of it laying that atmosphere down, and then you have the actual songs that kick in, and then like Night Call hits, and you're just like, what? And all of the music in it, but the slow motion, the moving of the camera, the framing, everything. There's just an atmosphere about this film. And what's so interesting is like, this is not what I would consider an action movie. It's a thriller with violence, because I don't feel like this film shoots the violence for action. It shoots it because it's brutal violence. It's like, it would be the equivalent of like somebody calling like Sicario an action movie, because it has like violence in it. People get shot and stuff like that. But like, this isn't about portraying like action for the sake of thrill kind of thing. But like, when stuff happens, people get brutally murdered. Like,
it's so funny you say that, Shane, because after watching a movie with my dad was like, I could see this guy being a Halloween monster movie. Like comparing Ryan Gosling's character to Jason or Freddy. Like, you know, to me that
or maybe Albert Brooks.
Yeah,
Right.
If you take them out of the context of this plot and this story, I see what you mean.
I still remember how shocked I was during that death in that bathroom scene.
That is very
yeah.
Oh my God, Christina Hendricks. But like, going back to like Vinny's point to kind of like jump off the broader conversation here, I feel like there's a couple of different kinds of Ryan Goslings. And you have the dark, silent, brooding, like kind of hero that you get in this, Only God Forgives, Place Beyond the Pines, Blade Runner 2049. He gives that kind of performance. So like, I definitely think this performance channeled into Blade Runner 2049. You also have like the cool, confident, like leading man type in like Crazy Stupid Love, where, you know, you're just like, what's with the New Balance? You in a fraternity? And that The Big Short, and he like saying that kind of character. My personal favorite Ryan Gosling is when he's just straight weird, because apparently he's just a weird person in real life. And watching like The Nice Guys, him being just this quirky, crazy, lovable loser, love it.
But now, how would you characterize him in Lars and the Real Girl? Because yeah, he's like quirky in that one, but you know, he's also kind of like, you know, sad. Like, he's sad. He's quiet. He's like pretty reserved.
I think that's how Ryan Gosling might be in real life.
So he just has like a sex mannequin as his best friend.
No, he has he's married it. What, Ava Mendes, right?
So if I could jump in, my favorite scene from that romance is also my least favorite scene from that romance. Like, Ryan Gosling, the character he's playing in this movie, right? If he is as brutal as he is, I don't believe that smile that he gives. So, okay, let me describe the scene. She's smiling at him, and he's sitting on the windowsill, and he's smiling back at her. And we know that he's been watching her for, what, months at this point? He's had a crush on her for months, but he's been too shy to say anything about it. And he just gave her a ride from the mechanic shop, I think, home. And he made a connection with her kid. And then they both know they like each other, and they're just smiling at each other. And I just thought it was really sweet and innocent, and I loved it. But I was like, this guy would not be so confident in one scene and then so shy in another. That it kind of broke my belief of the character, which is, I don't know, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, one that sticks in my head. But it also kind of it makes me think Ryan Gosling might not be who. Sorry, what's the character's name?
The driver.
This is the character we're talking about. The driver is not who he pretends to be, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I think, and this goes back to like one of the biggest pieces of symbolism the whole entire film, you know, with the whole scorpion on his jacket, is the whole entire idea of he wants to not be that. He doesn't want to be the one who's stomping a man's face in an elevator. But like he has that in him. And he really wants to and connect with Carey Mulligan, and he is. And I think he's hopeful that he can move on from that. But a lot of this film keeps honing back in on like, how do you get past your nature? Kind of thing. And so, because in the elevator, when he stomps that man's face in, and that the door shut on Carey Mulligan for the isolation, and what's the last shot is right on the scorpion on his back.
Actually, go ahead.
No, that was the last thing I was going to say.
It's funny what you say about that being his nature, because the scorpion on his jacket, that can kind of make you think about the whole, like that, you know, like the fable of like the scorpion and the frog, with like the scorpion has to get across like the stream, and it hops on the frog's back, and the frog says, you know, I'll bring you across the stream if you promise not to sting me. And then the scorpion says, I won't sting you. And then as they're going across the stream, the scorpion stings the frog, and the frog asks, you know, why'd you do that? And he says, because it's in my nature.
Well, that's 100% on purpose. Like, that's definitely what Nicolas Winding Refn was going at with the whole symbolism of the scorpion, is like, that's what the driver's trying to do, is push that behind him. And maybe I think that moment where he smiles at Carey Mulligan's like the furthest point he gets to. We're getting away from that. Because then what happens? Her husband comes back, he gets in trouble, driver gets pulled into it, and then things just spiral from there. And he gets like Al Pacino, Godfather Part 3. Thought I was out. And they bring me back.
What? You know what? As good as Albert Brooks was, what if Al Pacino played Bernie Rose?
He would have been fine. But I'm so glad that it was Albert Brooks.
I am too.
Oh yeah, he was great. He was great.
Empathy, the empathy mixed in with this sort of, you know, the first time he meets Driver, you notice they've got the shot of him standing above him. They made that very, like, they were intentional in making sure he's always standing in like a position of power, but he's always so nice. Albert Brooks, like, he's always got those mannerisms, having that empathy in combination with this kind of like, he's always in power. He's always going to have you under his thumb, is incredibly frightening. You know, because you almost kind of want to like him, but you know that he'll kill you in a minute.
Hey, I really want to interject something about Albert Brooks's character. Did anybody get the feeling that this is like the only time he channeled a live action version of his character Hank Scorpio from The Simpsons?
Am
I the only one who felt that?
Where is Matt? Where is Matt?
Seriously,
we need Matt for that one too.
Seriously.
When
he was the villain, he played like a Bond villain in an episode of The Simpsons, and he's like the nicest guy. He's like Homer's best friend, but he's like this super creepy super villain.
Well, I think if
that's the case, then you have like that coincidental connection between Hank Scorpio and the Scorpion.
And Scorpion, he's got the Scorpion on his back. Oh my god! And he technically stabs him the same way as Scorpion gets. It's obvious parallel. The director watched The Simpsons.
That's it.
So
obviously,
I do like his character on some level, because the thing is, yes, he's a criminal, and like, how many movies have we watched where we like criminals in it? Like Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs.
Clearly not
and
enough.
Like, yeah. So the thing is, it's like, he has a moral compass on some level. He doesn't want to do these things, but he gets pulled into it because of Nino, who's a dick.
Who's also good.
Who Ron Perlman kills it he's the real like asshole in this situation. And he's just like,
But he has a good
hate you.
arc too. Like he has a character. Like they justify that he always had a chip on his shoulder because he was a Jew in the Italian mafia and he had to
Yeah.
work his way up. Like
Oh,
that.
yeah. Wow.
That added
Yeah.
a whole nother dimension to it.
That was a
Like
great scene when he says they still pinch my cheek, you know.
Yeah.
That was his best scene. Is I was like, yeah.
yeah, it added a whole nother dimension to the character that, at first he could have just been like a one note. That goes back to what I feel about the movie with Subversion.
Yeah.
You think he's just a one note villain, but he actually has character.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and with Albert Brooks's character, like the two scenes that really stick out to me is like going back to Alex, you brought up when he first meets the driver, and the driver's like slowly taking off his gloves, and he's just like has his hand down. He's like, my hands are dirty, and he's just like, so are mine. And it's just
That was
like,
a good Albert Brooks impression, Shane.
and
Wait, do it again.
so are mine. And that just like captures so much about him, because like he acknowledges, like he does some bad things, obviously. But the thing is, like, he's trying to meet the driver on some kind of level of respect. And then the whole scene where it's just like that whole scene with Nino in the pizzeria, and he's just like, see, now you can clean up after me. Cause like he just loses it and just like stabs that guy and just like, oh my God. But the thing is, there's some level of like, he doesn't want to hurt Bryan Cranston's character. He doesn't want, and like even at the very end when he's meeting with the driver and he's like, the girl, she's out of it. Right. And like still acknowledging like, you're not getting out of this clean though.
Right.
And you know it. And he doesn't really have to say much, and it just works so well in the film.
Now, speaking of character too, like you have Bryan Cranston's character who's just naturally a gambler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter what he does, he's a snitch. Like it's in it throughout the movie, he does things where he's calling people out, he's thinking about his own back, but there's a part of him like that wants to be the nurturing father type, but at the end of the day, he's just the gambling snitch, and that's what happens. Snitches get stitches.
Like he says, like he spills the beans about the driver to Carey Mulligan. He can't help himself. It's like, and that's the driver gets on. It's like he doesn't know when to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one who tells Albert Brooks about the situation. And the thing is, that's why you hire Bryan Cranston, because like obviously I think most people at this point know him from Breaking Bad, but like this is the dad from like Malcolm in the Middle too. And like he can be such a lovable person, and he is that in this, which makes him so much more tragic, because it's just like he keeps getting in his own way,
right?
And
it's like you have talk about subversion again, you have father-like figures that are supposed to be the moral compass, but in this case he's not a really good father figure.
Most of the, and like it's so great seeing like even Oscar Isaac in like a small role as Standard in this as Carey Mulligan's husband. Like Oscar Isaac's great, and like obviously not a great father figure, and I love that scene where he comes face to face with the driver for the first time, and the dick measuring contest.
As he should, though. He just got out of prison and he's been hanging around his wife. Of course he's gonna do that.
That's of course. He's trying. Yeah.
See, he's feeding him out. He's like, have you been banging my wife?
Well, and the best part is like the look on the driver's face the whole entire time. He's just like, he's just been
holding hands with her.
He's like, you can tell he just wants to have a big smirk on his face, because I don't feel like he feels threatened in any way, shape, or form by Oscar Isaac's
not at all.
character.
Not at all. I thought that was a really shitty way. I think that was supposed to give us a window into Oscar Isaac's character. Like he's not the tough guy that the driver is. Like if he really thought this dude had been banging his wife, he would have confronted him. Not with his daughter behind him, not with his wife there. He would have spoke to him, I don't know, man to man, if you will. Whether you take that expression or not, right? But I think that was supposed to give you a little win. He's kind of a coward when it comes down to it. He lets other people take advantage of him and step on him, which is in this world that we're supposed to accept of Los Angeles, like you're not going to survive if you're that kind of person. And as much as I like Llewyn Davis, and as much as I like Oscar Isaac as a character, like I think from that scene, that's when we're supposed to get a window into like, because the scene before, he seems like a great dude.
Yeah.
He comes back gracious. He thanks everybody for coming to his party. He thanks his wife. He seems like he's on the level. And then that's supposed to give us like the next, just a little bit deeper of a view into his character. And it made me a little uncomfortable about that guy,
Well, and that's where things start spiraling it down, because like the next time you see him, he has the shit kicked out of him in the parking garage. And like, that's the thing. He went to prison for some reason. And you do see his colors when he confronts the driver in that scene. And then you see where he really fits into the food chain is getting beat up in a parking garage by tough guys.
Yep.
And then served up as sacrificial lamb. And like, he had no chance there. Speaking of like the party, another great use of song, Under Your Spell.
Oh yeah.
And just the slow zoom in on Carey Mulligan as that song's playing, and it's like, whose spell she under?
Right. Good. Oh, good.
Because the thing is,
Very
she's
good.
staring at Standard, but who's she thinking about?
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting, because it's like, I feel like the music there is such a great choice, because I really do think like she obviously is making a sincere connection with the driver, and her plans kind of get thrown upended because Standard gets out of prison.
Right.
Because the thing is, like, that seemed like a shock. Like, she wasn't expecting him to get out of prison. And I'm wondering if that wasn't by chance that he got out.
That's a good
Because,
point.
like, based off of what we see, there's no real cops or anything like that a lot of the time here. This seems like a kind of world where it's like criminals run everything. And maybe it's like he got out because, there's an opportunity to set him up.
That's a good point.
Could be thinking a little too much into that, but like
But you bring up a really good point, because like it is a very shady world. The cops, you could easily fool the cops by going to a Clippers game. I mean, you lights and all you got to do is just fool the cops with an elaborate chase, and you get away with it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't actually ever meet any characters who are cops.
Nope.
Right? They kind of cut them out of the equation. It's just regular people, this mystical figure, the driver, and then these underworld, scary guys. So
Other than the beginning of the film when they're chasing him and he goes to the Clippers game.
right, but you just see the cop cars.
You just see the cars.
They don't humanize anybody. They don't humanize anybody of authority.
It's sort of like, in Muppet Babies, you see the nanny, but you don't actually see the nanny. You just see like an adult, or like in the Peanuts, where adults are just trumpet noises or trombone noises. It's really the world of the kids, versus it's really the world of the criminals.
You're over here.
I think subtle storytelling that really shows you what kind of world this is when Christina Hendricks and the driver, like Ryan Gosling, are in that motel room. And when they say, nothing was stolen, you know exactly what kind of world this is. Yeah. Cops don't run things here. Criminals do. And like the TV in the background, and when they mention that, you just, as a viewer, just have that feeling like, oh no.
So that scene is good, because there are a couple scenes where he shows like that, where the driver is at, who this person really is, how deep does the depravity of what he can do really go, and that scene, I think even more so than the elevator scene, because he actually like lets this main character, who we're all kind of mystified by, grab her by the face, put his finger in her face. And so you could see like he is treating her like shit. You know, he is he's being just a brutal bastard of a human being at that point. And then the violence that erupts after that. And, I have to mention the cinematography in that scene because of the way they light his face, the dark and the light. It's very well done, because that's the scene, not so much the elevator scene for me, but that's the scene where we go, wow, this is not a good person.
Well, and like this is where we realize it, and the elevator is when Carey Mulligan's character realizes it,
right?
And then after that point, it's just he's just trying to do whatever he can to finish this,
right,
and get this done and
clean it up.
Watching this with Jess, she's horrified by that stunt mask every time she like, it is such a creepy mask because it's so close to looking human, but just something so off about it. And that shot of him walking up to the pizzeria and just that face is in the window, and it cuts back and like Nino's like ah, in like slow motion, and you're just seeing him like having a ball, and like this dude's gonna be dead.
That's what I think that was actually the moment my dad was like, I could totally, with the mask on, that's when my dad was like, I could totally see this, this is like Michael Myers, like, and it really hit me. I was like, that's what I said earlier. I was like, this is a movie monster, right? But he's the hero. Yeah.
And I feel like obviously like this feels like a neo-noir in the idea of like, at least in the sense of like, obviously there's a past here with this driver. We don't know much about him. But as the movie goes on, we start seeing these subtle then not so subtle hints at like who he really is from his past. And like, if you think about it, it's like could be a cold-hearted killer and pushed in the right direction. That's what he turns out to be in this film. And because like you see him do some horrible things to some people in this movie.
Oh yeah.
And obviously it just at some point just becomes a spiral up until, I guess the final shot of that really, really, really long shot on him in that car, like just where you're kind of like sitting there thinking like, we're just watching a dead body now. And then it's like, what is he? And I think it's such a perfectly played out story of somebody who's trying to move on but gets pulled back in and gets pushed to his very worst.
And he's also very calculating too, like he's always thinking about what to do. Like anybody else think it was so brilliant that he has all this blood on him after the elevator scene, but he goes on a movie set realizing that no one's going to be paying. He's probably got squibs on and not thinking that it's actual blood. Like I thought about, he's like, how is he walking around the city with like a shirt full of, but he's going on a movie set. Like they're not going to pay attention to that. No one else would think about something like that.
Well, he is very calculating because like, you could tell from just how he is. Like he's very planned out. Everything's to T. He's timing it. He's paying attention. Just the way that even as something as small as when he's waiting outside the convenience store or liquor store, whatever they were robbing, the way that he moves his body in terms of with such fluid motion of like Christina Hendricks, like he pulls up the seat and like gets it right back into exactly where it needs to be, like that. Where it doesn't even feel like he's even thinking about it.
Time does play a role, like a visual role. Like you always see his watch, right? And like you were saying with the slow motion, time gets distorted in certain moments that require you know, something big happening, like, you know, pulling Carey Mulligan away, or the slow motion going up into the hotel where shit goes, excuse my language, stuff goes wrong. Um, sorry about that.
We're adults. You can
We're
say
adults,
shit.
okay. Kids, don't say this. And or watch Drive, PG rated R.
$10,000 fine right there.
There you go. Or even, you know, before he goes to the party and he's watching from the outside with the mask on, time gets slowed down.
Well, and even from, because like we mentioned the Clippers game thing, but like that's planning. And that's critical thinking. Like he knows he has that game on the radio, knowing when's the perfect time to pull in there, and he gets out without skipping a beat. And like reverses jacket, throws over his shoulder, puts a cap. Like he is step by step by step, knowing exactly what he's going to do at all times.
Well, you know, great driving, even for just a regular driver, especially like a race car driver, it's a combination of planning and instincts, and perhaps maybe in the sports world it would be talent, you know, but all the, you know, the repetition and the practice that goes into, you know, becoming a great driver, you know, but instincts obviously play a big role, you know, when that cop, when he realizes like, okay, I'm just going to go. And he sees the cop, he goes, I'm not going to play around with this cop. I'm going to gas it. I'm going to put my foot on the gas and go. He knew in that moment, that's the best option. And he has to constantly make those decisions. He has to make it with a car. He has to make it with a gun. He has to make it with his
with
fist.
a knife. When he's getting stabbed by Albert Brooks, he knew exactly how to kind of still save his own skin on that one.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And wow, that's a really, it's interesting because I think the first time I watched it, I thought he was dead. I thought Driver lost that battle. You know, and watching it again, you could see his glove sticking out of the back pocket in his shadow, so you know it's him. But the first time around, I really thought Driver was the one who was going to die, and oh man, you really feel that. He gets that, like you feel it, like when he gets stabbed, like ooh, it's
like that's the thing. It's so visceral, this film, because like the scene with Albert Brooks and Bryan Cranston, you feel him slicing his wrist open and just being like, "Oh, it's done." It's like no more pain.
No pain. The empathy.
And
who do you guys think would win a fight, Anton Chigurh or Driver?
I think Anton Chigurh is
Antoine Chigurh from which movie?
No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men.
So here's the thing: is Driver a sociopath and a psychopath? Because Chigurh is.
That crossed my mind at one point during this movie. Like, is this dude completely? Yeah, but that was what created the tension for me between that scene where he obviously has a very emotional connection with, well, what I wanted to think was here's a hot take. What if he was just messing around with, what's the blonde's character?
Carey Mulligan.
Carey Mulligan's character. What if he was just seducing her with that smile and had no actual feeling in it whatsoever? How about that?
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think he's masking because he's trying to get a feeling of emotion. He just doesn't have it. You know,
I don't want to believe that. I want to believe that.
I watch enough Dexter. I'm like, this guy just doesn't have it.
No.
This is Dexter Morgan.
Well, let me challenge you on that. What would be his motivation then? What would be the character's motivation? Just
to be the very best that no one ever was.
Stop it, Joe. Because obviously Alex and I have watched this film the most at this point. Like, I never questioned that he doesn't actually have those feelings for Carey Mulligan's character, like all the times that I've watched this. But it's very obvious there's a darker person here that he's trying to repress. And like going back to your question, Joe, Anton Chigurh is a straight psychopath. I think he's winning that battle.
I actually say Chigurh wins. I vote Chigurh too.
Unanimous.
Yeah,
yes.
He's unrelenting evil. Like, I don't think that's I don't think Shiger's losing many.
It would be a good battle, though. No lie. I think it would be a very interesting thing to watch.
So, question
Right?
is, are we taking the driver to Applebee's? Since Matt's not here to answer.
Can't answer the question. We can't do it. Matt's not here.
I don't know. I'll be real with you guys. If I were to go out with Driver, he'd be very boring, and I feel like he'd be watching us and quietly judging us while we're all hanging out.
Well, that's the thing about, let me, phrase that, a lot of you guys mentioned like Pulp Fiction and Dogs and like some of these movies, like some of these characters you wouldn't want to be around.
Nope.
You would not want to hang out with Ving Rhames from Pulp Fiction, but if you're kicking it with him at the club and you have a beer with him during this movie, like it's during this day, on this day, you will enjoy being with this person because of what's going on. But on a typical day, most of these characters we're talking about, you want to stay the hell away from them. You don't want to get anywhere near them, but because of the music, because of the style, because of the the situation they're in, you are so into what they're doing and what's going on.
We would be like those truckers in that scene where he's in the diner. He would just curse us out.
Very good. That's the best answer we've had to that. Is like that's your answer right there.
There you go.
And that guy made the cardinal mistake of acknowledging that they were on a job together, because you can tell that the driver holds that very tight to the chest. And like, it's interesting thinking about like Baby Driver. I know, Joe, you brought that up earlier. The whole thing where it's just like, use different crews and stuff like that. And just like you don't want to like get paired up with somebody too much, because then people are gonna like, they're a crew, we're gonna find them. And you can tell the driver wants to keep that on the down low, because that's not what he wants to do with his life.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody acknowledging that at that point in the film, he just like, that's the point where you're just like, oh, this guy is I don't know if you want to mess with him.
Nope.
But it's interesting. Now I'm thinking about some of the other characters. I feel like Bryan Cranston's character would be that friend that you take and then he forgot his wallet.
Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. I'll Venmo you. Wait, I can't get the code the right way. Could you? I'll pay you next time.
Oh, and
you let him because you love the guy so much.
Yeah.
Or you just stab him.
And then I feel like Albert Brooks is bringing that like Tommy DeVito energy of like, I'm afraid to sit next to him because I'm afraid any given thing that I'm going to say is going to set this guy off.
When I meet certain businessmen, I think about Albert Brooks in this movie.
Yeah.
Not all, just some,
Just some of them.
Yeah.
And because the thing is, it's like he's such an interesting character, and he got nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Golden Globes for this.
Oh man.
Which makes me a little sad he didn't get nominated for an Oscar, because the more and more I watch this film, there's so much that performance. And it's so interesting because he was a comedic actor his whole entire career.
Yeah.
And like he shows up in this role and kills it.
Well, you know what they say, comedy is the other side to tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I haven't seen him in a lot besides, I have to be honest with you, but the stuff that I did see, even though it was comedy, it was like there was family drama and stuff going on in those things. And so it was more complex than, say, Dumb and Dumber or something like that.
Because like, he's the comic relief in Taxi Driver.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Holy crap, you're right.
Because he's
doing it a long time.
And like, he has a very specific personality. I love Broadcast News. I think that is such a great film with him, Holly Hunter, and
Ed Burns
and William Hurt. I'm actually in the process of watching that for my 150 essential comedies. That's the last one I'm currently watching right now. Just gotta stay awake to watch it because every time I get to it, I'm tired.
very adult. It's very mature.
Yeah, I remember watching that for the first time and loving that film and just being like, I did not expect to love this movie as much as I did, but it also had a lot to say about news and broadcasting. I'm just like, oh my God, today. But this cast is stacked.
The
music's
performances are just right on the money.
amazing.
They really are.
The music's great. The style is there. I just think this is something that, and obviously I've watched this quite a few times, and the more and more I watch it, the more I'm able to peel back things and notice little details and think about the symbolism, because like I've seen 3.5 William Winding Refn movies. I've watched the first hour of Bronson and I've never actually finished it.
He directed that?
Yeah. With Tom Hardy. And then Only God Forgives. I've watched that once and I'm just like,
I've watched it a few times. That's a dark glass of whiskey right there. It's a dark glass of whiskey.
and it's just like,
Yeah.
Oedipus?
Yeah. Like
Oh,
Greek
God.
tragedy meets like what do you call it? Neo-noir? Is
Yeah.
that Korea?
Wait, which movies is this? I don't think I've ever seen
Only God
God
Forgives.
Only God
Question.
Forgives.
Instead of asking if we want to go out for dinner with Driver, do we want to go out for Applebee's with this guy?
Wait,
The director.
oh, the director. Yes. we
Oh
do.
yeah, for sure. Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I
yes.
lost you guys on that.
I thought you were talking about the Oedipal protagonist. Of
No,
Only God
I was
Forgives.
just
I'm
thinking-
like, oh,
You're talking about me.
less.
I was like,
Like, hey,
I
this
don't
guy
want to
directed
go
this
me.
movie with that happening. Yeah.
Anybody
take out for
anybody
drinks.
who's had an edible take on any kind of a trope, I think is going to be a good Applebee's date. I think that's a yes.
I think he'll just bullshit the whole time and make the waiters feel like crap, which would, I don't know. It would be a
So,
story.
Not gonna lie, I've seen some interviews and stuff like that, and I don't. He seems like kind of a jerk about
Yeah.
some things from what I've seen, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to sit and talk movies with you.
I really feel like you've got there are those movies that are made by a director, because we always talk about like our favorite directors.
Mhm.
And I saw some of the films he did. I saw Bronson, and I saw he did like a trilogy film in the UK that was very like documentary feel, like social realism type of feel. Had none of this sort of style, none of this sort of fairy tale stuff. Because Drive, and for all intents and purposes, like is a fairy tale. You know, it feels like a fairy tale. It has this mystical element to it. You know, but Only God Forgives and Neon Demon
Yeah.
have that same feel to them. You know, Neon Demon also takes place in Los Angeles. It's about LA models. Only God Forgives doesn't take place in LA, but it almost might as well have, like, though it has this like they all have. Only God Forgives and Neon Demon have that fairy tale aspect. The difference is he decides to go way dark in both of them. In Only God Forgives, he goes Greek tragedy dark. And then Neon Demon, he basically goes, I don't want to give it away. He just goes body horror dark, you know.
To be fair though, don't old school grim fairy tales or like Pinocchio or the old stories really have, messed up
yes
consequences?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not tearing those films down. I think those films are definitely worth watching. I just don't think they're going to have, you're not going to walk away. Like I walk away from Drive feeling like $1 million, like, oh man, I wanted more of that. I walk away from the other films like, all right, I need to go take a shower now.
What is wrong with my life?
Yeah.
I
So
think for those who haven't seen it, you might underestimate how dark Only God Forgive gets, because it's pitch black in terms of like what you're left with at the end of that movie, just being like, I don't know how to feel about this movie.
and there's a difference between something that you say, because Jim brought up art house before, and I think like those other movies feel more like art house movies because at least in Drive, there's an element of, well, these characters are still likable. Like you still kind of like, I really I really found myself liking most of these characters, minus the one like henchman guy with the bald head who's just a complete dick.
Yeah.
You know,
He
all
was.
the
I
time.
mean, to be fair, they had to be like one note character, and it had to be him.
Yeah, and he was great. You know, he played the note very well. You know,
Yep.
like I hate people like that, but you know, like the characters in Drive are a lot more likable than the characters
And
you get
human.
in the two films after. Right, and it's all, isn't that what it's all about? You know, I want to be a real human being. You know, like
Yep.
you know, a real hero, a real human being, just like the song. So you know that element of it, and then you
Wow,
know,
I didn't catch on to that, Alex.
yeah.
It's a
And
very
that's
much
what
like
the
a
driver wants
Pinocchio.
to
I
be.
want to be a real boy. Yeah.
Right. Well,
Wow.
there's, so I have to give you this take. And you know, and I think I mentioned it to Shane last time, and the elevator scene always makes me think about it. No disrespect to Hugh Jackman. He is our Wolverine. But if you ever read the Wolverine comics, if you ever read the ones that take place in Japan, and you know about the Berserker Rage and how he's trying to be this good person for this woman that he loves, there's a part of those comics, if you've ever read them, where I think it's Yoriko or Moriko looks and sees the carnage that he just created, and she's horrified by what he just did with his Berserker Rage, because he didn't just protect her, he sliced these guys up. He kills them in the comic. And when Carrie Mulligan, you know, that whole scene, he kisses her, you know, and then he stomps the guy brutally, and she walks backwards outside the elevator, and the elevator shuts. I mean, like, that is the best story of Wolverine I've ever seen. And they did it inside of like a 2.5 minute scene inside of an elevator. They got it. Like,
You
they
know
got
what's
it. They don't
really
even
funny is, speaking of Hugh Jackman, there's a scene in Prisoners that really captures that, which the funny thing is it's not even in any of his Wolverine roles.
Not a Wolverine, right?
Hugh Jackman scares the living daylights out of me in Prisoners. And like, you can tell he scares the living daylights out of Terrence Howard right next to him.
Yeah.
When he's like smashing that hammer into the sink, and I'm like,
He's mad. Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, he's gonna kill this guy. And that's that level of, you are going to a whole other place where like the people around you are just like, like Carrie Mulligan slowly backing away from this situation. And that scene's so, like, obviously that scene's one of the most famous scenes in this film, and because it says so much and uses such great visual storytelling. Because how much dialogue's in that scene?
None.
None. And the whole entire thing is, you know exactly what happens, you know exactly where their relationship is after that, and you know exactly what the director is trying to convey by the driver and his character in that scene. And that just shot at the back of the jacket with that scorpion on it, and that's where it holds. And how many of us are buying that jacket now?
Yeah.
You know, before doing this podcast, I was like, can I like find a jacket like that? I probably would not have enough time to do it.
But
I was like,
could you live up to it though? Like, if you put that jacket on, could you really do what's necessary? I wouldn't put it on for that reason.
Well, and
I mean, listen, does that mean I'll never cosplay as the Joker at Comic-Con? No, I'll still dress up as the Joker, even though I'll never catch up to it. I know I would never be it, but hey, I freaking love the character.
And here's the thing, because this is a very interesting film, because it does kind of fall into that people misread this movie kind of thing, where it's like you have the Taxi Drivers of the world, the Jokers of the world, American Psycho of the world, and Drive, and you have all these characters that people are like, yeah, he's such a cool character, and just like, you're not supposed to like this person.
That's what I was talking about earlier when I first started. I was like, we're not supposed to like these characters. We're engaged in them. We're fascinated by them. But it's like, we're never going to be like Dexter Morgan. We're never going to be like Tony Soprano. never really gonna be like Walter White. Like these are characters that are like crossed the line.
There are a
And
lot
I
of
feel
people,
like
guys.
out of all of these,
Yeah,
probably the driver at
Right.
least is trying to be a better person.
right. But that's the point. Is he's
Yeah.
trying to be. He's stepping out and saying, "I'm going to try and be something else." Other
But it's like,
this, because he's, remember, he's incredibly isolated. With the way they shoot it, they light his apartment. It's small. He lives in the
Yes.
same building, but it's small, it's dark, and he's working on, I forget what he's working on. I don't
Car parts, the whole
some car part, because, outside of what he does for cars with mechanical driving for the movies or being a getaway driver, that's his entire life. He doesn't have any real human connection. And so I think, and for me, that's relatable enough for me to like the character and to like the character's journey. Look, Steve Buscemi's character in Reservoir Dogs, he's a weasel, but I like him. I still feel I go to the movies because I want to like the characters.
I'm guessing you still tip, right? You make sure you do leave a tip, right? Even though you like Steve Buscemi's character, you're still leaving a tip.
It's funny because I left a place. I left a Red Lobster with my buddies the other night, and we were pretty tipsy. We were pretty drunk, and I forgot to tip the waitress because they have these little computer screen things, and we paid partially with a gift card. And it never gave me the option to tip, or if it did, I was too drunk to remember. So,
that's excusable. If it was Steve Buscemi, he would make a whole fit about it.
So for the record, there's no man inside my pen.
He's in your finger. He's in your finger.
He's right in there. So, but I had my father drive me back. I have a car. This was in California this past week. He drives me back, and I dropped off a tip for her. They put it in an envelope and put her name on it. So I did.
Aww.
I drove back and
good guy, Alex.
That's right. Good.
There you go. And I guess at this point, does anybody else have anything else that they wanted to talk about in terms of Drive?
I feel like we all covered it for the most part. I think, it subverted a lot of expectations. Overall, I will probably watch it again. If it's on TV, I'm definitely going to be watching it. I wouldn't say it's on my top 10 favorite movies I'm going to go out and actively watch, but I know that if it's on, I will sit down and watch it, and maybe over time probably appreciate it more. I think it just generally goes with like taste and what you want, like what your comfort is. Like it really, I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I saw it because I got to see something that I didn't think I would see, which is like, it is done in film. Like you do have characters like that in movies, which are, you're not supposed to really want to be these characters. And I think that's what you were talking about before, Shane, is that you don't want to be these characters, which a lot of people assume they want to be like the character. But, you are engaged in this character, that in a lot of TV shows, you get that better in a lot, I would say, than in feature films, like I was saying before, like Dexter and The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, that it helps with movies. And it's probably I would say it's even a trend right now that a lot of movies focus on villains or focus on bad people being the protagonist. In some ways, Drive kind of emphasized that in the feature length, format.
Sure. Yeah.
He looks like Cool Hand Luke, right? But he has a little bit more. I remember when I watched Cool Hand Luke, I was like, I couldn't understand what this dude was doing. I didn't know where he was coming from. We have no backstory. But maybe that's kind of where the Scorpion jacket comes in. I don't know. The only thing we didn't really talk about is the moment in what was that Michael Mann movie? Collateral. In Collateral, when Shadow on the Sun starts playing Audio Slave.
Yes.
And that is the moment I remember from that movie. Years later, that song playing in that movie leading up to the car crash is a really powerful, what, 2.5 minutes, whatever it is in film. That was a really powerful, and so that vibe in that whatever 2.5 minutes kind of gets exploded into a full film here, and that was really cool. I really enjoyed that.
Interesting. That was the vibe that you got from Drive was the same vibe just from that scene. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I don't know if you and I had a chance to talk about that.
Nope, not at all.
Okay, because I've talked with you about Audio Slave a little bit, but that is one of the best songs I ever heard in my life. I love it. It's so good.
I love the breakdown from that song is still one of my favorite, like, oh my God. The breakdown in, I don't know if you guys like heavy music, but like Shadow on the Sun, the breakdown at the end of that song is so heavy, but it's all the better for the lead up. You can't just, it's kind of like, what's that System of a Down song? Where it's like, it's not Chop Suey. It's, there's a System of a Down song that ends with about 20 seconds of some of the heaviest music I've heard in rock, but like
BYOB,
you can't appreciate it. It's like it's talking about God giving people of the sun. It's like when I was the sun, I gave life to people, or something like that. When I became the sun, I gave life unto the man, or something.
Yeah,
like
Shazam that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think I can name 3 Systems of a Down songs, so I don't know how much help I am in this situation.
The point being, if you just listen, it might be toxicity. Yes, it might be toxicity. If you just listen to that breakdown, it'll wash right over you. But you need to kind of hear the whole song. Okay, you need to watch the whole movie to really appreciate the moment where everything kind of hits the fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I agree.
So if there was a takeaway from the Michael Mann, from Collateral to this movie, right? It's that the whole piece is kind of an art piece, and it like that. If I had to define the art house form, like, you're taking the movie as a whole. You know what I mean? And you kind of have to watch the movie as a whole to get what's going on, to get the vibe, to get the mood. You know, you can't just put a 2.5 minute clip on YouTube and say this is what Drive is all about. You kind of have to watch the whole thing to get what Drive is about.
The tension in both those movies is really good in stretching the rubber band until you see the action or the thing that's either horrifying or violent. And what's interesting, it's so interesting bringing up Collateral, because I think in Collateral you've got Tom Cruise in the back seat, who is just, he's a bad person because he has to be, it's what he does. And then you have the working class, sympathetic, person in the front seat in Jamie Foxx, and you're going to root for him because he really is. He's like us. He's just trying to get by, Whereas in Drive, it's this duality within one character. It's kind of if you want to look at it, the duality within one, whereas in this one it's like a duo.
It's like Darwin. You just got to evolve. Got to get over it.
So should I go out and be a getaway driver? Is that what you're saying?
No, that was the thing about in Collateral. That's like one of my favorite lines when he's telling that right in the club.
Right. Good.
That's what Tom Cruise says.
Jamie Foxx goes into the club and he tells the guy that Tom Cruise tells him to talk to. It was a while since I've seen it, and he tells him it's like you got to be like Darwin. You just got to evolve, get over it. I don't know. It's like the one thing
I would totally be down to talk about Collateral.
I would be too.
We're already there. We might want to have that be the next one, but that it makes sense. It's so great that we linked those two movies together.
It was, and I think it all started because I was just getting some Miami Vice vibe from it. That it just think about Michael Mann, right, and the just peak Michael Mann.
Yeah, and like it does have that neon feel to it, and if I were to try to classify what I would consider an art house film, it's a film where it's like it isn't just about the story and the characters. It is about the experience that it's all wrapped in. Because like I could like I'm a big fan of Marvel movies, but the thing is, if you look at the Marvel movies, I have actually I'm not going to go off this tangent right now, but I have a lot of thoughts I want to say because something I watched recently actually. But the point is, I watched Spider-Man No Way Home and loved the experience and hated a lot of the filmmaking because a lot of it was clunky and horribly obvious CGI screens and stuff like that. But like I got lost in the characters and I really loved the film. But the thing is, it's not an art house film because honestly, the filmmaking doesn't really matter, and that's not what they're trying to accomplish. In an art house film, there is an artistic atmosphere that's being created around the film where the style and the filmmaking and all the atmosphere is just as important to what you're getting out of this as you connecting to the characters in the story.
I like that. I definitely agree with that. It's like when you look at a painting, right? You appreciate so much more than what the painting is basically telling you. There's more to the painting. There's imagery. There's symbolism. That kind of goes on your definition of an art house film. Whereas Spider-Man No Way Home has a very clear picture. This is going to be a love letter to Spider-Man. Like this is a comic book, fights the bad guys type of deal. There might be a message there, but like for like an art house movie, it's got layers, as Shrek would like to put it. It's got layers.
Ogres
like an
are
onion.
like onions.
Like an onion, yes, indeed.
They make people cry. If you sit around the sun, they get little white hairs. But the idea is
that's the word. Style, I think, is part of what you're getting at. Like this art house movies will put style over substance, and it can be done really well, or it can be done really,
and then it'd be exploitation.
Yeah,
you know?
But I think Drive blends them very well
because Drive is a very accessible art house film because you still have characters that you can connect to, and it is a crime story. Like that's what's going on here, and it has romance in it, and like it's a more accessible. Like one film that I just watched that is 100% an art house film that isn't very accessible is called Last and First Men, and it's based off a science fiction novel, and basically all the film is beautifully framed and shot video of these large structures and monoliths and all of these different kinds of things, all shot in beautiful black and white with an incredible atmospheric score with Tilda Swinton narrating over it audio messages sent from humans 2 billion years in the future back to us, trying to help us understand how to avoid what's going to happen to humanity.
That's really interesting. That's pretty deep.
That's creepy as
nuts.
It's an hour and 15-minute completely art house film.
I listen to a premise like that and I'm like, I wish I had the creativity to make a story like
and
that.
What's extra sad is this was actually the last piece of art made by Johan Johansson, who directed it and did the score, and he's the one who did a lot of Denis Villeneuve's scores.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Before Hans Zimmer took over and then brought the to the table, because you know Hans Zimmer has to bring the bombast to things. But like, of course, it's really like was such an interesting experience, and I say this is films for cinephiles because I don't think mainstream audiences are going to give a crap about this movie. But absolutely, I sat there and appreciated all of it. But I think this might be a good a time as any, seeing as it looks like we're dwindling down to think something happened with Jim. But this was a great conversation about Drive. If you haven't seen Drive out there, do yourself
go and drive to go see it.
I guess drive to somewhere to buy it, but I think most people are just going to sit at home and be like, "Where's this streaming? Where was this streaming? Because I own it. I watched it.
I own it too.
I did watch it on IMDb TV with ads.
Okay. There you go. So
it was on Prime. It was on Prime at one point, I thought.
Yeah. And so next month, so we're starting off going back to us each picking, and my pick, I volunteered to go next, is we're going to watch Throne of Blood. And this is a Kurosawa version of Hamlet in samurai, in like feudal Japan. So
cool.
It's funny because I literally just watched the tragedy of Macbeth before we recorded this. So I'm all about that Macbeth, I guess. So we're going to be checking that out, and we'll be talking about that next month. But Joe, Alex, and then Jim and Vinnie, who are not with us anymore at this point, thank all of you for always tuning in and supporting the Development Hell podcast.